I don't always do missions and territory battles, but when I do, they're special. Welcome back to the class, everyone. RoTB has been here for a few years now, and with the current design of swapping in planets, it looks like it's going to be here for a while. So while we should be aiming to increase rewards by getting more stars, one of the best ways that we can get more Get To currency is by completing special missions for our guild. And that's exactly what I want to be talking about today, and hopefully this can generate some discussions in guilds, or maybe you can just take up the mantle yourself. But I want to be talking about the priority order in which we should be going about getting the teams to be able to perform better in the special missions so that we can get that reoccurring currency every single time over. It's one of the things that I really like, because while some of the combat missions, and I guess I should say combat missions, even though they require specific characters, sometimes specific exact characters, like the Kit Fisto one on Coruscant, if you build up the characters to be able to do that mission, and then you eventually get to a point where you can just completely deploy, your relics end up not being as useful, at least as far as territory battles goes. That's not entirely true with special missions. When we look at the Night Sister special mission over here, which I got all my Night Sisters up and ready to go for, I can get currency not only for myself, but for my guild over and over and over again. So without further ado, I know maybe not everyone was expecting it, but we do have a spreadsheet listing out the current 9 special missions that are available. I assume there will be more added over time, so we have to update this. But just as an overview, this is what everything looks like. These are the phases that they all appear in. These are the planets, and then these are the corresponding rewards. So you can already see, and I guess you can stop the video here if you want, but you can already see how I have them all ranked out here on the far right-hand side, where I have Brock and Tatooine and first place, being the most important for priority, as well as Zepho and Dathomir at second, Kashyyyk and Corellia at third, and then really Kessel, Med Station, and Vandor at 4 and 5. But going on into explaining the reasoning behind why they are ordered in the way they order. And I guess one thing before we actually get into the explanation, disclaimer, if anyone is wondering where Reva's special mission is on the list, it depends where your guild's at. If you all have Reva, then it's the least important special mission to focus on. If nobody has Reva, then it becomes the most important, and it's not close in both those regards. But what I want to focus on is the longevity of the Get To and the Get Through you're getting. And I guess, again, before the deep dive, I do want to say that the amount of currency that you can get from these special missions, I feel like not a lot of people really understand the gravity they can have. So at the very max box for Get To, you can get about 6,000. When you do the math for how much Get To you can get through special missions alone, it can be more than double that. So we take this figure in here of 50, and that is per person, and we say all 50 guildmates do it consistently. That's 2,500 currency. If we apply that to every single one of the missions, that comes out to over 12,000, which is over double. So now that we've kind of covered why we're even talking about this in the first place and where Reva fits in, why are we labeling Bracca and Tatooine as the first two more important? And it comes down to a few things. Number one, they are just very accessible. Not just because they appear on early planets, and they do, that is a part of it, but also because they don't require you to gear up a lot of different characters that may or may not be required for something. In contrast to this, we have Kashyyyk, which requires a Saw Gerrera and Rebel Fighter team. This is a little bit cumbersome because not only are there 5 characters, but they're 5 characters that aren't necessarily required for a lot of Galactic Legends, so it's not a natural progression. When we look at Bracca, which I did the mission earlier today, I guess I could have showcased it right now, which we did win, by the way. It is, not only is it on a R6, I believe you have to have them R7 for this node specifically, which is, again, more accessible than Relic 8 or Relic 9, but it's also only 2 characters, and really, Seer is required to get Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. Granted, not an R7, but at any rate, that's a pretty low entry, or pretty low barrier of entry. And the pretty much exact same thing can be said about the Mandalorian mission on Tatooine that requires Bo-Katan, Beskar Mando, and then a third. We see a kind of similar dynamic here in the sense that 2 Mandalorians are at least required to get Bo-Katan Mandalore. So it's something that you get fairly easily. Now, in addition to those 2 things, what it's going to set apart it from the rest of the missions as well is that both of them are going to unlock a new planet, which in the case of Zepho is actually going to give you access to another special mission, which is also kind of accessible as far as things go. But even if it's not, even if you can't do that at all, you do get extra rewards in these extra prize boxes, and eventually you get 1 star. I actually really like these planets as well, because when you're progressing through TB and you're finding your guild in a little bit of or between a rock and a hard place, like you can't move, using these planets and getting them right up to this first threshold and timing things out can sometimes be the easiest way to add a star, because it's flexibility, because it doesn't necessarily block your path, because it ends right there. So again, first place, as far as priority goes, what I would suggest all guilds work on, if you already have Reva taken care of, is getting access to Braca and Tatooine. Again, they're inaccessible locations, and then beyond that, they're also going to give you more bang for your buck beyond the actual get to that comes in it. Now, in tier 2 is going to be Zepho and Dathomir. And while I mentioned earlier that in the first tier, they're going to unlock a new planet, these 2 will not be doing that. However, they are going to match one of these similar themes that I mentioned earlier, and that is the sense that overall roster building is going to highly favor these special missions. What do I mean by that? Let's say you get access to Zepho because you did what me or other people recommended, and you get to this clone mission. This clone mission, one of the best teams, and the team that I use for, I think Bad Batch actually might be better, but I don't really want to R7 my old school Bad Batch. But one of the teams that I've been using very consistently is this one right here, which is 5's lead, followed by the rest of the 501st and Krex. I have heard people use Rex lead. This isn't like a hardcore stance on that. But at any rate, using this team, 4 of the 5 members here are required at Relic 7 for something really important. Krex is for Galactic Legend Leia. I believe Ark and Echo are for Lord Vader, and then Rex is for Ahsoka. So even if you're not necessarily going after those legendaries right now, getting them all the way up is going to, again, lower one barrier for that Galactic Legend at some point. And the only character that isn't technically required at Relic 7 is the best one at Relic 7, which is 5's. And the reason why he really wants to be Relic 7 is because of his sacrifice, or rather his tactical awareness, Zeta, which is going to give his max health, protection, speed, and offense stats to the rest of his allies when one of them would die. Which, again, not speed, but pretty much the rest of those stats are going to scale with Relic level. So keeping him anywhere below Relic 7 probably isn't ideal for your 501st comp in general. Now, in addition to that, Dathomir is not quite as roster friendly because the characters are on much newer things. Like if you look, Krex being on Leia, that's becoming an older Galactic Legend. I guess it's only the 2nd oldest Galactic Legend, but even Lord Vader being even older than that. The new Night Sisters that are really the ones that are excelling on the Dathomir mission, you do want them eventually so you can get access to things like Balin and Galactic Legend Ahsoka, but I understand they're newer. I don't believe the characters are accelerated. We checked Trooper Peridia, yeah, it's still 1 shard. So again, entry barrier is not quite nearly as low as the clone mission, but still, if you are going to be going after those characters at some point, Relic 7 on Great Mothers, Morgan, Night Trooper, and Death Trooper Peridia is something that is going to happen naturally. And then Marin, probably not one of the most important R7s in the entirety of the game, but it does help a little bit with her counter versus Jabba in 3v3, of which I have been using a lot. That does require Omicron, so again, you're kind of dipping into more investment, and she also uses a team that's not this one, but you have to have her for the Territory Battles mission. Different from the other 4, which you can actually do the mission without the other 4, but it's so easy with them. I actually haven't done it without them because I don't really want to take the rest of my Night Sisters up to Relic 7, especially Mother Talzin, who is typically in my favor for her to die a lot in the exact Jabba counter. So at any rate, those 2 are going to take the cake for our 2nd tier that we were referring to here before. So again, first 2 that are most important for special missions, Braca and Tatooine, get a new planet, doesn't require as many characters. Zepho and Dathomir, while it doesn't get you another planet, the characters that you are using for those missions that are going to do very well are at least usable for Galactic Legends at those require relic levels, so you don't really have to work as hard or create an entirely different side project to finish them. Now in Tier 3 is going to fall Corellia as well as Kashyyyk, and for two pretty different reasons. The reason why I like Corellia is because it uses a magical number of 5, aka Relic 5, to be able to complete it. You do need Kira and Young Han at Relic 5 to be able to do this mission, and luckily, Kira nowadays has kind of gotten an upgrade through Balin. While she might not be a mandatory 5th to be with the team a lot, worst case scenario, she's a filler mercenary, and best case scenario, she is an ideal extra. So at any rate, bringing her up to Relic 5 really shouldn't be all that painful. I actually did it myself recently. I'll show the part and do with the Datacron. And then Young Han is where you have to bite the bullet a little bit. Not exactly a useless character, but I mean, I could easily give you 200 that are better. So that kind of ultimately ends up being his problem. But again, this is early access to get 3, not even get 2, but get 3, so that you can start getting more of that for your guild, which it should be considered probably a more precious resource than get 2, at least for the majority of people, just because of what sits behind it, be micro attenuators as well as Omicrons. So don't really have to do that much. One of the really bright signs about the mission, when we go in and look at it, is the difference from some of the other missions that only require a couple of characters. It doesn't say something very specific here, like smugglers or scoundrels or anything like that, meaning you can take in any character, in fact, any character, because this is in the neutral zone, so you could take in dark side or light side. The comp that we were showing earlier had Rey in it, just because that seems like an easy fix. You can do it with smugglers. I've seen the videos. It does work, but I mean, why do young Lando when you can do Rey? That's all I'm gonna say. But at any rate, so that is going to come in 3rd place, and along in 3rd place is going to come Kashyyyk. And I actually prefer Kashyyyk for my own roster, but I don't love this as much as I love, say, Zepho and Dathomir, because the characters, or the team rather, just doesn't come readily available at Relic 7. So at a bare minimum, you do have to be using Saw and Rebel Fighters, and Saw himself, the only thing that he's currently required for is Giant Cal Kestic at Gear 12, which is very different from Relic 7 for anyone who passed kindergarten or maybe 1st grade math. And after that, you can and should be using Drogon as well as Captain Rex, who are requirements for Leia at Relic 7. They are fantastic additions to the team, but that still leaves you the other 2 characters to be finished here. I do really like Kyle Katarn. Not only is he at Relic 5 for Starkiller, so you only have to bump him up 2 levels, but his initial ability, Power the Valley, that's going to put defense and speed up, this is really nice. Because once you get the battle going on Kashyyyk, you're going to be consistently applying offense and crit damage down to the enemy to the point where they really are going to struggle to kill you. And even when they do, they'll probably be killing Luthen Summon. If they get in a lot of hits before you get those debuffs out, then they actually can kill 1 or 2 of you off, and the mission can be entirely jeopardized or just made a lot harder. So Kyle Katarn, nice addition there, just because he gets to go first because of the turn meter mechanics here, and then bolster the team by making them go faster as well as giving them defense up. And then in the last slot, I've really enjoyed Luthen for the reasons that we really just said. He's a great addition to the Rebel Fighters as a whole through his uniques, but in addition to that, he also gives you someone who can die. They can also just come back, or rather be resummoned rather than revived. So overall, I mean, every time that I've not done this battle on auto, every time that I've done it manually or mostly manually, it has ended up in a success. Drogon's great damage, Captain Rex is really good control, Kyle Katarn for that starting ability, and then Luthen. So again, I do like the team because I think it has usability and longevity in other game modes, but at the same time, I'm also essentially telling you to Relic 7, maybe 3 characters, one of which is a Conquest character that you may or may not have access to. So again, still a good mission to do, but not going to rank in the highest of places. Now, last but not least, well, no, actually last and least, is going to be Kessel, Medstation, and Vandor. And these 3 really have one shining thing against them, and the relic levels are too high. That's what it comes down to. Both Kessel, Medstation, and Vandor are all going to fall in the Relic 8 to Relic 9 territory. And it's just really hard to justify those relics on those characters, even when some of the characters are really good. Like Medstation, it requires 5 Inquisitors, all at Relic 8. Inquisitors are a fantastic team. I will brag about how good Inquisitors are all day. And 5 of them are already required to be, 5 of them are already required to be Relic 7 as it is, so you wouldn't think it's that much of a bump. But man, Relic 8 is expensive. Getting several of those characters from Relic 7 to Relic 8, I would prefer you go after all of the other special missions that we already talked about before making that final push, because the team just doesn't seem like it makes that much of a difference in other game modes, whereas having, an entire extra team of Saw and Luthen and, say, GAC is probably going to benefit you more than the 1 extra level on Inquisitors that if you're putting on defense are still going to get beat by Traya, or at least so I'm told. So overall, not bad to go after, but that is going to be one of the larger issues. And then the other, I guess, issue that I have with these is that they just require characters that I don't want to take to Relic 8. I don't want to take L3. I don't want to take Kira. I don't want to take Vandor. I don't want to take Young Han to Relic 9. I mean, I guess you can. Like, they're still on the priority list technically. They're just in last place. But that ultimately being the reason why. They don't necessarily unlock a new planet. You don't really get those characters at those relic levels by nature of just going after other things. And then in addition to that, you're probably giving up other things to be able to get there. So I'm not trying to badmouth anyone who wants to do that or anyone has done that. I would just suggest do these first, arguably in the order that we suggested. So that is going to be the video for today. Hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of a shakeup with TB content. But until next time, thank you for watching and stay awesome.